So President Trump was just in a press conference. He was talking here on August 11th. That's today's date. He was talking about cleaning up Washington, D.C. and some unusual powers that he was going to employ in order to do that. And then he spent about 15 minutes because of press members' questions talking about Ukraine, Russia, and to a lesser degree, China. I'm going to show you two particular highlights of that. There's a question about Russia and Ukraine, and then there's a question about Russia and China. And I'm going to skip past the China part into Russia so that you can see what he was talking about. President Trump, it was a mixed bag what he was saying as far as signaling what was going to happen moving forward. He's optimistic that he can make some kind of something happen or not, and then I can walk away, he said. Listen to that. And then he was also talking kind of respectfully about Putin and not quite derogatorily, but not really happy about Zelensky, talking about what a great relationship he had with European leaders and so on and so forth. There were actually three different times. The last one was so small, I'm not even going to include it. So let's listen to and stop and talk about what he said when he was asked the questions. Here we are.
The China tariff deadline is tonight, but do you plan to extend that?
We'll see what happens. China's been, we've been dealing very nicely with China, as you probably have heard. They have tremendous tariffs that they're paying to the United States of America. And we'll see what happens. They've been dealing quite nicely. The relationship is very good with President Xi and myself.
China tariff deadlines were supposed to expire tonight. That's 11th, starting on the 12th. And like the India one, which I haven't heard anybody ask him about, that doesn't mean that somebody didn't. I just haven't heard it. He said, we'll see what happens, even though it was supposed to be expiring. And yeah. Okay.
President, you mentioned your upcoming meeting with President Putin. Can
Yeah.
you tell us what you hope to get out of that and whether you'll consider inviting President Zelensky to join?
So
What do you hope to get out of the meeting with President Putin?
you have to understand, this is a war that should have never happened. There's a war that wouldn't have happened if I were president.
And he's going to repeat that at least 5 times or more during this time. It never would have happened if it wasn't for me. Let's just get beyond
Never
that.
happened. It was the apple of his eye. I got along very well with President Putin. But if you look, under President Bush, they took a lot of territory. Under President Obama, they took a lot of territory. Under Biden, they essentially took the whole thing. You know, it's just a question of time. Under Trump, you know what they took? Nothing. Nothing. I was the one that said, you can't build your pipeline. That was half built. I came in, I stopped the pipeline. It's called Nord Stream 2. Nobody knows that, you know?
Okay, so he's blaming past presidents, Biden and Obama, for what happened with the earlier invasion, and it would never have happened during my time. And then he was and rightfully so, he was warning about Nord Stream 2. This, I give him credit for that. He saw that was going to be problematic to be too dependent on one supplier, and that is Russia. So I'll give him the credit here.
Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2. You might have not even heard it. Biggest pipeline in the world. I stopped it. I was not a friend of Russia, but I got along well with Putin. It's always good to get along with other countries if possible, but that doesn't mean you roll over like Biden did. Biden came in and he immediately approved the pipeline. I couldn't believe it. Then they say Trump wasn't tough on Russia. I wasn't tough. I was the toughest. Putin said, if you're not tough, I would hate like hell to see you. I stopped the biggest economic development job, the biggest job that Russia had ever built. I stopped it. It was dead. And this low IQ president came in and he let them build the pipeline and supply oil and gas all over Europe, you know?
Yeah, Nord Stream 1 was bad. Nord Stream 2 was a bad idea as well. But you notice that in Trump's tone, he's saying, look, I've been tough on him. He's not saying the same lines about, I have this great relationship. I mean, he'll mention it here and there. Well, it's good to have a relationship, but he's trying to say, no, I'm tough on him. I don't know how far that's going to go, but he's at least saying that. So he's gotten the message from somewhere that this has been problematic for him.
So this is really a feel-out meeting a little bit.
Hear that?
And
this is a feel-out meeting. He's trying to see if Putin is serious or not.
President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. Now, I've said that a few times. Then I've been disappointed.
Okay, so he's at least acknowledging that Putin keeps going back and forth. And I think what's Putin saying, and like Anders Puck Nielsen was just saying, like maybe Putin feels like he went as far as he can go and he has to appease with some kind of meeting. Or and Anders Puck went on to say, like, what will probably happen after this is he's probably setting himself up to say, here, I'm trying to do this, but then Zelensky, he's not playing ball. So, yeah.
Because I'd have like a great call with him, and then missiles would be lobbed into Kiev or some other place, and you'd have 60 people laying on a road dying. I said, that's cold, that's cold. But it's a violent war. 5,000 to 7,000 people a week are dying. And you know, there's nobody from here. They're all Russian and Ukrainian people, and some people from the cities, much smaller number, but still, those missiles do damage and they kill a lot of people. But mostly soldiers, and they're young soldiers, although in the case of Ukraine, they're getting much older. They're drafting 60-year-olds now.
So with the little rambling bits that he says, I'm wondering who's advising him, where he's talking about, he'll talk about 300 million we gave, that sort of thing. Like, where did that come from? The 60-year-olds, where did that come from? Some bits he gets right, some bits he's kind of off.
It's a terrible thing to witness, and I think I have an obligation. Look, this is Joe Biden's war. This is not my war.
Time number 2.
I made a deal with NATO a month ago. You covered it very accurately, actually. We don't pay anything anymore. We're not paying anything. They are buying things from us, and NATO is paying us. I got it raised from 2% of GDP to 5%.
Yeah, and to his credit, he did. I mean, I would credit Putin more with that raising to 5% than Trump, but he's not wrong.
And they're paying us for everything that we send. We're not paying. But Biden approved $350 billion.
Yeah, and where he's got that number and why that's so fixed in his head, and nobody's correcting him, I just don't understand.
Europe has spent $100 billion. The money that's been spent and the death is incredible. It's the worst thing that's happened, by far the worst that's happened since World War II. So I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin. And I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war. You got to end it. And he wasn't going to mess with me. This war would have never happened.
Number 3.
We had a discussion about it one time, and we never had that discussion again. Would have never happened. And when the election was rigged, and then Biden took office, which was barely took office, the auto pen took office, bad things started happening. Bad things, stupid things were said. And it ended up in a war. And and I don't believe this will happen anymore because I have that pretty well covered. This could end up in a third world war. This could have been a third world war. I don't think that's going to happen now. But I thought it was very respectful that the president of Russia is coming to our country as opposed to us going to his country.
Well, he's missing the picture from the Russian perspective, where they think that they're getting one over on the United States by having Putin setting foot in former Russian territory in Alaska. Wow. I mean, the disconnect is just amazing.
Been a third party place. But I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm...
Okay, so this next little bit is actually one of the better parts of this, and then he also has a soured part later on. So let's listen to this.
Leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. And, I have a great relationship, I think, with all of them.
He thinks he has a great relationship with all the European leaders. That's kind of interesting.
And I get along with Zelensky, but, I disagree with what he's done. Very, very severely disagree. This is a war that should have never happened.
With what Zelensky's done. Zelensky was minding his business in Kyiv. Zelensky didn't start the war. It's what Putin did. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, there's these pieces that just don't quite fit yet, right? But some are starting to come into play, not all of them. And I don't know why his advisors can't dislodge like the 350 million, or that Zelensky somehow started the war, or
wouldn't have happened. But I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or...
Wow, that would be interesting. A Zelensky-Putin meeting I don't see happening. I don't see Putin willing to do that.
Or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if...
Or a trilateral meeting between the three of them.
They need. But I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelensky was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap.
To go to war and to kill everybody. They're defending their homeland. Like, you're invaded. Like, all hands on deck.
Because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know
Okay, he's still talking about the land swapping, but I think he still is thinking like Witkoff 1.0, where the Donetsk and Luhansk are traded for Zaporizhia and Kherson, and I don't think that that's what's actually on the table at all.
that through Russia and through conversations with everybody to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven, and there'll be some swapping, there'll be some changes in land, and the word that they will use is, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine. But they've taken some very prime territory. They've taken
some land back, not all land back. So it's not even in his mind to try to go to pre-war borders.
largely
This was really instructive, what he was talking about from a real estate point of view.
ocean. In real estate, we call it oceanfront property. That's always the most valuable property. If you're in a lake, a river, or an ocean, it's always the best property. Well, Ukraine, a lot of people don't know that Ukraine was largely 1,000 miles of ocean. That's gone.
He's referring to the Black Sea or the Sea of Azov, but you understand what he's saying, and that's gone. And what Russia really wants to do is connect it all the way down to Odessa, which I don't know that militarily they'll have the strength to do.
Other than one small area, Odessa, it's a small area. There's just a little bit of water left. So I'm going to go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say, good luck. And
Hear
that'll
that?
be the end. I may say this is not going to be settled. I mean, there are those that
He may just kind of be like, well, nothing's going to happen here. You're not serious. Now, I don't know if that means that he plans to walk away entirely or whether that means you just keep fighting it out. Call me when you're ready. We'll see.
believe that Putin wanted all of Ukraine. I happen to be one of them, by the way.
Okay, that Putin wanted all of Ukraine, and I happen to be one of those that believes that. Yeah, Putin wanted all of Ukraine. It's not really, so Anders Puck-Nielsen said this in his last video. It's not really that they wanted all the territory. They want to control Ukraine, and that's what it means. So even if they get this territory deal, they still want to control Ukraine, and Ukraine still doesn't want to be under Russia's control.
I think if it weren't for me, he would not be even talking to anybody else right now. But I'm going to meet with him. We're going to see what the parameters are. I'm then going to call up President Zelensky and the European leaders right after the meeting, yeah. And I'm going to tell them what kind of a deal. I'm not going to make a deal. It's not up to me to make a deal.
Okay, well, that's good to hear, that it's not up to him to make a deal, that he's just trying to move the thing forward. I'm not sure, but then there's other things that are more concerning. I'll show you what I mean in a little bit.
I think a deal should be made for both. I think Russia has to get back into building their country. It's a massive country. I think they have 11 time zones, if you can believe it. It's a massive, it's by far, from the standpoint of land, it's by far the largest. They have tremendous potential in Russia to do well. They're not doing well. Their economy is not doing well right now because it's been very well disturbed by this. It doesn't help when the President of the United States tells their largest or second largest oil buyer that we're putting a 50% tariff on you if you buy oil from Russia. That was a
That's India. Now, that's really interesting that he mentioned India. Trump is getting pummeled for not having put the 100% sanctions. And yet, before the 100% sanctions, he put up to 50% sanctions on India so far. So at least he should get half credit. I want him to go to full credit and put the 100% sanctions on India, only because I want India to back off, not because I believe that secondary tariffs are a good idea. I want them to go, you know what, this is too much. I'm not buying the oil. So, I mean, he's done something. He's not done nothing, but I wish he'd go all the way.
That was a big blow. And then they say, gee, he wasn't so tough. Nobody else would have done that. And I haven't stopped there. I mean, look, I was all set to do things far bigger than that, but I got a call that they'd like to meet, and I'm going to see what they want to meet about. I'd like to see a ceasefire. I'd like to see the best deal that could be made for.
Okay, he wants to see a ceasefire, but this is day 153, I think, since Zelensky said that he would be willing to do a ceasefire, and Putin hasn't said boo about it because the conditions are not right. The conditions of what Ukraine has to give up have not come yet.
Both parties. You know, it takes two to tango, right? So ultimately, I'll have a meeting next week. I had a great relationship with him, considering the fact that, I was not nice to him because of the pipeline. I ended the pipeline.
Not nice to Putin, he's saying. Like, he's really on the defensive right now about how nice he's been, how rolled he's been by Putin. Like, you can hear the defensiveness in his voice. That's very interesting to me.
Also gave the javelins. Do you ever hear of a javelin? Javelin is called a tank buster. They say that Obama gave them sheets and I gave them javelins. If it weren't for me, all those tanks that were destroyed at the first days of the war because the tanks got stuck in the mud, some commander made a better. They would have been in Kiev in 4 hours, going down the highway. But a Russian general made a brilliant decision to go through the farmland instead. And
so I'm not sure about that. I think it would have taken a longer time to get there, and they had their tanks just like piled up in this long line. And if you knock out one tank in that, or a couple tanks in the very front of the line, then you have a whole problem. And yeah,
just had torrential rains, and the rains were so bad, and it was mud, and those tanks got stuck in the mud. I don't know who that general is, but knowing Vladimir, he's probably not around any longer because all those tanks were stuck in the mud and they went along with the javelins.
Knowing Vladimir, that commander's not probably around any longer. That's a wild for him to be saying that he is acknowledging that.
I gave him the javelins. You know that, right? I gave him javelins. They gave him sheets. But I'm going to meet with President Putin, and we're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first.
Okay. So, I mean, what he's saying there isn't really bad. I mean, like, maybe we'll get a deal and then we'll talk to the Zelensky and then the European leaders. Okay.
And then I'll call them after. And I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting. Or I may say, we can make a deal. I will tell you this. I've seen a poll coming out of Ukraine.
Now, this was nuts. I didn't see any poll like this. I saw almost the inverse.
88% of the people would like to see a deal made.
If you know what poll he's referring to, put that in the comments below, because I would like to see what he's talking about, because that doesn't sound right to me. I've seen almost the inverse where it was like 17% are willing to actually do something, like take some kind of deal. The rest want to keep going.
And if you go back 3 years, everybody was gung-ho for war. Everybody's gung-ho for war until you have it. It's an amazing thing. I had it with a couple of countries where I couldn't get a deal done with one particular country. And I just couldn't. The guy's great. He's a friend of mine. Great. Good leader. Tough as hell. I couldn't get the deal done. And then he went into war for a short period of time. You know where I'm talking about. First term. And it was nasty. Guys being killed all over the place. And he went through 1 week of war, and I was able to get the deal done. He said, this is nasty. Yes, please.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you were saying there. First of all, Volodymyr Zelensky is not invited on Friday?
The question was, is Zelensky's not invited on Friday?
He wasn't a part of it. I would say he could go, but he's gone to a lot of meetings. He's been there for 3.5 years. Nothing happened.
And what is the definition?
I mean, do you want somebody that's been doing this for 3.5 years? What's the definition of a good deal? I'll tell you after I hear what the deal is, because there could be many definitions.
Well, he's been there for 3.5 years and nothing happened. What? I mean, he's trying to. I mean, I don't even know. And then you switches to what the definition of a good deal is. I'll tell you after I hear it.
Talking about a very large and complex situation. Now, I tell you, the war that I just settled with Azerbaijan and with, as you know, and Armenia was almost as complex as this one, having to do with routes, trade.
Meeting on Friday with Vladimir Putin.
Well, we're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can
Yeah.
work.
So I think this is the headline here, the main thing to look for, that Trump is trying to feel out Putin to see if he's actually serious about something or not. I don't think Putin's serious about something. And if Trump clues into that, I think it'll go one way. And if he doesn't clue into it, it could go another.
How will you know that?
Because that's what I do. I make deals.
Mr. President.
please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask you two questions, one about China, one about Russia, if I could. On China.
Okay, so we're going to skip over the China one. This is at 1 minute and 57 seconds. So we're at 1 minute and 59 seconds. You can just look up, if you want to see the whole press conference, which you probably don't, you can go to the White House website and it's posted there.
Do you see a time, Mr. President, when there could be normal trade between the U.S. and Russia? Should your meeting go well? Should there be peace?
I do. Yeah. Russia has a very valuable piece of land. If Vladimir Putin would go toward business instead of toward war, you know, it's a warring nation. That's what they do. They fight a lot of wars. A friend of mine said Russia's tough because they just keep on fighting. They beat Hitler, so did we.
Who's that friend? Just guess. Pause this. Put a comment below. Who do you think that friend is?
And they beat Napoleon. You know, they've been doing this for a long time. I asked a question to a very, very smart man that some people like and some people don't like.
Here he comes.
Viktor Orban, right?
Orban. Orban. He's taking advice from Orban. Okay.
Hungary, the head of Hungary. And he's
Worst economy in the EU, Hungary, and he's taking advice from him.
in that same area and knows the two countries very well. I said, this was before Biden didn't do anything to get us out of it. He could have gotten us out of that. It would have never happened. I said, so can Russia be beaten by Ukraine? He looked at me like, what a stupid question. He said, Russia's a massive country, and they win their country and they win their life through wars. They fight wars. That's what they do. He said, China.
Well, okay, so he's not wrong that Russia fights wars and that's what they do. And that's precisely the problem. And that's why you have to stop them where they are.
Beat you with trade.
Then he
Russia
starts talking
beats you
about
with
China.
war. That was a very interesting statement. China's not beating us with trade, not when I'm in charge. But they were beating Biden with trade, but they never beat us with trade. Don't forget, China had to pay $400 billion worth of tariffs when I was last time. That was last
Tariff
time.
stuff again.
And if we didn't have COVID, all of this stuff we would be loaded. We're finding hundreds of billions of dollars of cash is pouring into our country now because of tariffs. And all we're doing is we're doing what they do to us. It's so beautiful to see it. They found last month, as you saw, $25 billion of excess cash flow. They're saying, where did it come from? I said, I'll tell you where it came from. It came from a place called tariffs.
That's looking at one side of the coin and ignoring the other side of the coin, the lack of tourism or educational travel to the U.S. or sales that you can't see or whatever else. It's so short-sighted.
And we're doing very well. We're really doing well. But I expect to have a meeting with
He's going to get back to Putin in a second.
Putin that I think it'll be good, but it might be bad. And I'm here for one reason, to get rid of a war that somebody else started. Should have never happened. And if I could end it, great. Complex war, a lot of bad blood, But Zelensky's been there for 3.5 years. So if you put him in a room, now I will say this, ultimately I'm going to put the two of them in a room. I'll be there or won't be there. And I think it'll get solved. Yeah, please be happy.
Ultimately, we're going to put him in a room and we think we'll get it solved. Okay. I mean, that is a good goal to get to. The other things, trying to make a deal without Zelensky is not a good goal, but okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Excuse me, I'm going to suggest.
Okay, so that's pretty much the end of it. He goes off and he talks about something else a little bit more, but it's really nothing to see here. So again, I'm glad that he's seeing some of the things that he's seeing. Some of the points of fact that he seems to have in his head are not necessarily the best, like somebody's not advising him well. And then he seems to be down on Zelensky. He seems to think that he can make some kind of movement with Putin, but he's skeptical of it. And so that's good. So there's some good points, there's some mediocre points, and there's some potentially really bad points, but I'm not nervous about it like I was when this first happened. I think that nothing will be forced upon Ukraine through this process. And I think it's even possible that Putin might have overplayed his hand and be trying to get too much, and it could backfire. But from Putin's perspective, this is a coup that he gets to go to foreign Russian or previously held Russian lands, which is still Russian lands that America just temporarily holds in their minds. Give us back our lands, Alaska. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, tell me what you thought about what you saw here. I'm interested in reading your comments. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.